and that 120 pages is lucky enough to find a buyer, because it still comes down to that. And that's what's changed too, investment, buyers. People spend money differently these days. They're a little bit leery about spending it these days. There's too many right now, especially because there's so many insecurities going on in our country, especially with, and these insecurities are hitting Hollywood big time, big time. People are afraid to make a move. They're afraid to make a commitment on anything. It kind of reminds me of the Breen censorship days, or the communist blacklist days, where everybody's tippy-toeing around, not sure what's politically correct or incorrect. So that's got writers kind of tippy-toeing, and so the safe bet: make comic books, make video games, make superheroes, make action pictures, make horror movies. Stay safe, make sequels. You know, take video games, turn them into movies. Just crisscross them, because it's all now cross promotion, cross collab. Everything is like,
Right.
yeah. So if you've got something that doesn't have a whole lot of marketing possibilities to it, and it's strictly a heart-rendering story that's going to make some moviegoers happy, getting someone to believe that with you is the hard part. So bridging the gap is really just finding support, and it usually comes down to financial support, because every film, every book requires financial support on some level to give you the freedom to write this thing, to make this thing, to film this thing. And unless you have the money to do it, it's not going to happen. You're always going to be depending on somebody else, and if you're depending on somebody else, you're against the odds. So, and I'm not saying the odds are breakable. Like Samuel Arkoff said, it's a great place to become a millionaire, but you just got to realize how difficult it can be. And we're in a little room here with a bunch of talented writers, and right now in Hollywood, there's about 25,000 writers and about 15,000 are unemployed, and every month there's screenplays arriving from film schools all throughout the world, arriving on desks, unsolicited screenplays. I'm the next one, read mine, I got this great idea, and they just nonstop. I mean, I keep myself kind of unlisted now, so because now I'm running my own company and stuff, I don't want to be barraged, and I'm still getting between 25 and 30 unsolicited scripts a month that I didn't ask for. And unfortunately, you don't have the time for, if I was going to read every one of these scripts, I'd have no time to do what I do. So I'd have to get somebody else to read them. That means I have to pay somebody else to read them. So if I'm paying somebody $100, $150, $200, $10,000 to cover a script for me, that by page 10 they go, I'm sorry, this guy from Bumblefuck, Iowa has written a piece of shit. He didn't do his homework at all. Kill it, boom. Well, that was money wasted. So if I did that with every unsolicited piece that came in, it'd be like, silly odds. So there is no bridging the gap. It's just your own belief and your own tenacity and your own originality. And if you've created something original, hopefully in your lifetime it will find a home. And if not, hopefully in somebody else's lifetime it will. But I will tell you that, and this is not comforting to somebody who's looking to make money from their art right now, but I will tell you that our world, and I mean our world meaning books, film, entertainment, is filled with sad late case scenarios. As John Lennon said it, it's really a rough place to be. It's a very lonely place to be when you're ahead of your time. So when you are discovering books and novels from years and years ago and from decades ago, and they're getting rediscovered or reappreciated long after the authors and writers and filmmakers are dead, that's kind of sad. But I mean, I read a lot of biographies, and it's just so sad how many of these famous movies and famous stars that I thought were enjoying all the success while they were alive were not. They were not. They were broke. They weren't getting the accolades. The movie was a tank. I mean, some of the greatest, wonderful. It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, I can name so many movies that are just so credible that tanked. They were failures. They became successful over the years from other mediums, from TV, from this and that. So there's no bridging the gap. It's just a matter of keep your fingers crossed and have a lot of tenacity and believe in yourself. Follow your instincts. Don't listen to just everything that everybody else says. And if you can take what I'm saying for a grain of salt, but use your own instincts in the end. But I don't know if I could say there is a secret answer. The story, by the way, to answer your question originally about Atlas Shrugged, we thought the story was John Gall. It was the obvious. If that's the main mystery that drove me through the movie, to the book, until the book disappointed me with a 28-page speech by Ayn Rand at the end. To me, it was fascinating. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? He was mysterious. So to me, it really wasn't it was a love story, and it was the woman's point of view, obviously, but it was really all about the driving force of getting to John Gall. But once the writers set in, they all got caught up in the politics and different social notions of the book.
And each one picked a
Each
different
one,
thread.
yeah, each one took a different direction. Industrialism, politics, it's all over the place. Fascism, it was going everywhere.
Thanks.
All right, I'll get to something a little bit more. Excuse me, look at my own notes here now. Oh, another thing I want to mention really quickly about books, because we talked about expository, how visual versus words, and how you could do something in a movie in 30 seconds, but it might take the written word to do 9 pages, like I was mentioning on my own piece. There's what we call the chronological dialogue. When you have in a book, in order for a scene to make sense, to get a point across about a particular plot line, dialogue has to go from point A to point B. It has to start by opening up whatever the plot line is supposed to be. It's commented on by the other characters. Eventually it ravels up, and then the plot line becomes clear either at the end of the chapter or the end of the book or whatever. So it follows a chronological succession. In a movie, besides overlapping dialogue, quite often dialogue is not put in chronological order, because a movie starts to screw with other things that you don't think about in books, like time lapses and flashbacks and memories and thought processes inside and point of views and all that. So that takes dialogue and puts it in a whole nother place. Now, how many people have seen Red River? Great Western by Howard Hawks of all things. And John Wayne, Montgomery Clift, great movie, 4-star movie. It's always on TCM. There's 2 versions of the movie which I never knew. The version that most people see is the version where Walter Brennan, who's one of the characters in the movie, plays the cook, narrates. So like he would jump us from point B to point A. So maybe a scene will happen with a cattle thing or something, then you'll see an establishing shot of them on the plains, and you hear Walter Brennan going, and then we went to Abilene, and he's telling us what's going on. It was 10 years later, and the winter was hard. Well, evidently, when they filmed it, they didn't film it with Walter Brennan doing the voiceover. They filmed it with a diary, page turning. So but it's never been seen. And just ironic enough, the reason I'm thinking of this is it was just on TCM last night. I didn't catch it in time. I was flipping through it. Oh my God, it's the diary one. And it was the first time they were premiering the diary one. It took on a whole different vibe. Because now what happens, you see them on the planes coming, and then all of a sudden dissolves over them a book with a page. And then you're reading. It was interesting, and I kind of liked seeing a classic a whole other way, but I got to tell you, the filmmakers had the right idea the first time. So that was their way of trying to respect the book. They thought, well, because the book was based on the Chisholm Trail, Red River. So they were so these were pages out of the Chisholm Trail. That's what they were reading. So they were stopping the movie to read the book. Stopping the movie to read the book. Now, I've seen a couple of the movies do this too, where they'll show like a passage from the book, or maybe they'll open up the movie with a passage from the book in the beginning and the intro, just to kind of set the pace. But for the most part, they're 2 different animals, and it becomes quite obvious sometimes when one works and one doesn't work. So if you ever have a chance to see the diary one, check it out. It's crack up. It just different vibe altogether. Same movie.
That's the one I've seen.
Is it?
I haven't seen the.
Oh, you're kidding!
Walter Brennan dialogue.
Oh, then you'll really be interested to know what you think of that one.
Well, they have a different ending too.
They totally different ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fascinating when how you see the process changes things. And that was because over the years there were changes being made to the film. It didn't get released for like 2 years. So anyway, okay. So the other thing I wanted to mention was expository dialogue, which is something that really in the process from book to scripts is the biggest thing you're going to be shocked over, or the biggest thing you have to be careful of if you're the screenwriter. A book has a tendency, and needs to have a tendency, to be a little bit more expository than normal, because it's taking you out of your place, out of your office, out of your house, out of your living room, out of your back porch, and it's putting you into, wherever the book is. Gone with the Wind, you're in the land, So whatever the book wants you to bring, it's bringing you there, and it has to expositorily help you get there by telling you obvious things. He's lifting the bottle, so he unscrews the cap. He looks at it for a second, takes a drink, makes his tongue go around, puts it back down to the table, takes a little water. Now, in a book, that might be really helpful to have all that described. If it has a point it's making about, well, he's a neatnik, and you don't know the thing on the tip. So, but in a script, obviously we know that's going to be done. It's not going to be talked about. It'll just be an action that you might pick up or might not pick up as a viewer, and that's what makes movies fun. because you don't see it the first time or the second time or the third time or the fourth time. And then maybe you read a book about it and they go, if you notice on the scene with a blah, 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 and you go back and you look at it, oh yeah, oh God, I didn't never notice that before. So it just becomes the use of expository as an art form in itself. It's how someone translates a novel or a book without hurting the integrity of how much impact was put into 15 pages in a book that's now going to be about 10, 15 seconds, or maybe a half a page or a page and a half in a script. So finding those bullet points for the screenwriter is really essential, and the novelist has to understand that those bullet points are still to their credit, because they wrote the vision that those bullet points are being drawn from. So, yes.
Do you ever have an issue with an adaptation where you have the script and then an actor just completely doesn't like part of the book or doesn't like the particular line and things like that, so it totally gets changed?
Yeah.
Or the actor has trouble with the line, or...
Well, if the actor's a big name and they start making changes, you suck it up. Because the studio will tell you to suck it up.
Right.
Or the director will tell you to suck it up. Unless what the actor did is so terrible, the director has to go, well, you know, Liam. But most of the time, yeah, they'll make changes. You just have to understand that that's the actor. If they're an integral actor, they understand their own art form. They're not butchering your word. They're just inside the character you created. And so they're now living the character, which you did. You only lived the character as a shell, because you created, you're the god. You made the inside, the outside, the description, the hair color. But they're living it. It's like if you create the Frankenstein monster, you created it, you get that credit, but you're not living as the Frankenstein monster. So once they're living as your character, they're going to say, no, I wouldn't say that. No, that word doesn't feel natural to me. I don't think I would do that. And if they're good at what they do, these will be reasonably decent changes. I mean, some of the greatest improvs in the world, things that are now classic moments in films, were improvised scenes by actors. From Harrison Ford shooting the guy with the sword was all improvised. He just did that as a kick, and Spielberg loved it. There's moments that Marlon Brando said things, and this one said things, and they're all in the film. Robert Redford and Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy's Sundance Kid, when he goes, well, the fall will kill you. So when they do things like that, those are wonderful moments. And yeah, they're normally good. But when you have some half-assed B actor in a small little independent movie shooting in Desert Hot Springs, and they're going, I think really the actor, it's like, dude, you're lucky you got a job. Do it the way I wrote it. so that really comes down to the filmmaker and the actor and how much control you have. But yes, it will happen all the time. It's just a matter of when it's right.
I understand that there are, if you write a screenplay and you put car chase, there are ADs or directors that specifically know how to put
Second unit.
So you're not going to really get into the streets it goes down or any of that stuff. It's going to be created by the director. And so you don't really have to get into the specific.
Well, what you can do is you can describe the essence of the chase. So take Bullitt, one of the greatest car chases in film. So if you just said, Bullitt jumps in his car, you describe what kind of car it is, and the guy takes off and through the streets of San Francisco, almost running into this, hitting carts, bumming up and down hills, car bouncing, maybe describe the entire thing in a paragraph just to get the essence of, how intense it is or how tenacious he's being about chasing this guy. Then you're right. The director takes him there and he sees either a 15-page action sequence or a 6-page or whatever, and then a lot of directors don't have time to do action sequences because they're too wrapped up in the actors. Now, I'm one of them. Every film I've worked on, I've done action sequences, but I'm not really a fan of it. There's just something about, when you're looking at a car and you go, yeah, good. I like what you're doing there. There's nothing to direct. It's all about the look, the composition, and where your setups are. So action specialty it is a specialty, and you normally leave it to second unit directors or second unit action directors. And some of your greatest movies made, which have these great huge sequences in them, which made the movie famous, French Connection, etc. Ironically, that scene was directed by the director. And you have to look at the end credits where it says action, second unit action director. But unfortunately, they don't. When you're sitting in the theater, the audience is already gone by the time the credits are rolling. So those people, they don't live in they just live in kind of a cloud. Nobody really knows who they are half the time, unless you're a film connoisseur or something. But for the most part, they're, what do they call them, unheralded heroes or something like that. But yeah, you don't have to write that in a script. I remember I had a script sent to me once by a writer in, I don't know, Oklahoma or something. He was it was an unsolicited script, and I just thumbed through it. I knew immediately it was not even worth looking at because I could tell the guy didn't do his homework. It wasn't formatted properly. It was, just opened it up, you had 3 pages describing the characters. You know, Larry Bazubo, 40-ish, but you don't do that. It's in a book, not in a screenplay. So he was all this novelist kind. I could see that it was an amateur kind of stuff. But I went ahead and just scanned through a couple pages. I get to page 3 or 4, and in about a paragraph and a half, now this is contradicting what I just said before, I was going to throw this up. In a paragraph and a half, he describes an action sequence, which anybody reading the script would realize this is about a $2.5–3 million story. This action sequence is about $15 million because he's going, and then, it's like one of those things like, and the battleships crashed into each other as the planes descended and blah, blah, and they sunk and the glacier came up. I mean, he's describing this thing in his head, which is so cool, but in relationship to the story, it's minimalizing something that's going to be gargantuan on film.
What do you think the budget for taking those car chase scenes would have been?
Oh, I'm thinking those car chase scenes are running about between $1 million to $2 million, something like that. Yeah, about $2 million. Because I'm just using arithmetic of you just upgrade it over the years. What used to take $300,000, $500,000 now takes a couple of million. If a movie costs $3 million to make, because of the economy and because of advertising rates and stuff, a $3 million movie today needs to make $8 million to break even. So a $100 million movie needs to make about $240 million to break even. Everybody just thinks once you get past $100 million, you're breaking even. That just pays the people who put the money up back. Now there's all the profits and participations and all that. So when you do films and you're designing action sequences and stuff like this, you have to take all that stuff into consideration. If you're looking to have this film be successful and make money on it, less is more. Minimalism sometimes is better than over the top. You can always extend. It's harder to cut back. So it's easier just to hey, this movie could use another this or another that or another this. But when you got a big fat film that's got all this crap and it sits in front of an editor who has to figure out what to do with 17 hours of car footage chasing. So that's why, like I say, it's gotten to the point now where it's so formulaic that the story represents usually about 15 to 25% of today's movies, and the rest is all effects, action sequences, CGI. And CGI is another one that's been I was involved in one of the first CGI films ever. I worked on Tron back in '80, and it cost something like $80,000 at the time and 2.5 months for us to make a CGI version of a floating pen. And the test we did was going to be a pen that floated through space. It was an artificial pen, create a CGI pen. We'll do 3 months, $80,000. Now today, of course, they can make this entire golf course CGI and probably do it in half the time, but at 6 times the cost. So films now today are really gauging on cross promotion. So if they make a big sequence like that, they're not counting on whether you viewers enjoy it in the audience. They're counting on the kids are going to buy the video game and the T-shirts and the merchandising and the TV write-offs and all the toys and.
Green screens are used a lot now, evidently. Too.
Yeah, well, green screens process. Well, the process has been around forever, but green screens are, we have a green screen stage. We use green screen a lot. The thing with green screen is that it's, and I don't want to drift on because that's not what we're here to talk about, but the green screen technology, just because you have a green screen you shoot in front of it doesn't mean it's going to be an effective use of green screen. Green screen is all about lighting, the lens, the cameras, the type of green screen. It's really, there's specialists that do green screen. I don't consider myself a specialist, but I surround myself with green screen specialists. So any green screen I've ever done, I defy the viewer for you to tell me where my green screen leaves off and starts. Because I mix it with the real stuff to the point where you can't tell. It's like, wasn't that green screen? No, that was the real thing. That's green screen, right? Yeah, that was green. So if you can fool your viewer, then it works. But if they can see it, it reminds me of those cheap car commercials they used to make in California. Remember the guy going, "Hey, come down and see that guy," and then he's always in front of some crazy, So
you don't use that in your screenplay. You
no,
don't say that.
no, you never. That's
director.
no, because you're directing. If you're doing that, you're directing and producing. You never say this will be a green screen shot. No, never. No camera will come through the window and pan in, no. No camera work, don't talk, never mention the word camera in your scripts. Okay. Anyway, any other questions, Daniel?
Chip, ever since Art Buchwald won that case, Coming to America, has Hollywood tried to, have they been more careful when it comes to, you know, the truth as to who is responsible for what and this and that, or is that just?
They have more lawyers.
Okay.
That's the answer to that one.
Yeah, I just-
If they can get away with it, they still get away with it. They just have more lawyers now, and they have more fine print, the contracts are thicker, so it's harder to discern when fact and fiction leave off and stuff.
Well, it's like in Forrest Gump, the author of the Forrest Gump, he got pretty cheated out of his.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I'll give you one quick story, and we'll get back to our thing here, because it actually involves screenplays. I wrote a script with, you remember Howie Mandel? You know Howie Mandel. Well, when he was a comedian, he was doing stand-up, and he was on St. Elsewhere, when he had hair. And so he and I wrote a script together, and it was called, at the time, first it was called Native Tongue, and then we changed it. It was called Native Tongue, then we changed it to The Interpreter. And we took it all over Hollywood and we pitched it. It was about a young guy who works at the UN as an interpreter. And he happens to speak a very crazy, weird, foreign, rare language that nobody could, nobody ever spoke it because it's one of those lost languages. And at the time, the country was just embroiled with some kind of a Cold War with that country, and so he's brought in as a translator. It's kind of a comedy, little drama, little comedy, little drama. And then at the end, basically, he has a chance to save the world because this dictator is coming to America to say what he's going to do to blah, blah, blah. And he speaks at the UN, and he's actually come to the UN. He's threatening everybody, but our translator decides to not say what he's saying, and instead translates it to a completely different language. And so the guy's going, maybe he's saying, I bury you all, you fascist. And then he's saying, I love every one of you, you're the greatest country in the world. So what's happened is he's throwing all these threats, and people are going, oh, and so he's not knowing what's happening. Now he's getting into it, and he's like starting to smile, and so it's starting to like shift things, and it's kind of a silly thing. But anyway, we took it everywhere, and we couldn't get any bites, We finally took it to Paramount, of all places, and I took it to Sidney Pollack. And Sidney Pollack was there, and he had a young development director there, and her name was Lindsay Durant. And we pitched the project, and no, I think we'll pass on. Okay, thanks so much. And anyway, Howie and I put it on the shelf. Figure we'll deal with it another time, another place. If it's worth it, we'll see. And he went on to do what he does. I go on to do what I do. Jump ahead 10 years, and there's a movie opening up called The Translator with Sean Penn and Nicole Kidman. So I said, oh, I can't believe it. Someone's doing something with the UN. Oh, shit, I got to get a copy of the script. That's too much. And I'm not angry. I'm just more like, another one of those. I was ahead of my time. It was a lonely place, And so I get the script sent over. Holy shit. It's like, it's 80% on script. I mean, everything short of the characters' names, they're the same script. They took a few comedy pieces, made it more dramatic. So I almost moved all the comedy stuff out of it. But it was the same project. And I think, who the hell had the balls to do this? I mean, so I looked to see who the producers are. And the producer's Lindsay Durant, a former executive at Sidney Pollack. Now, so we launched into a lawsuit. Anyway, we won the suit. We waited until the film was made. Our lawyers said, wait till it's made, because the further along they get, the bigger the suit. Once they're in it, the only way they can get rid of you is to pay you off. Because they're going to take a big loss. So I was anxious just to sue. No, stop. I go, no, just wait. So the film comes out, and now we're all like, oh, it's coming out, it's great. And like, it tanked. And it was out for about 3 days, and the reviews were terrible, and it was just bombed out terribly. So the film never recouped its money, never made $1. And so we sued anyway, and basically we've got the same thing we would have got if we sued to begin with, which was, some plagiarism stuff. And, I think out of the whole thing, the lawyers made about $85,000, and I made about 40. I mean, we were awarded $1 million, but by the time it was divvied up, court costs and all that, I got about 40. So anyway, so it can happen, and it still happens.
Did you have an actual script that
Yes,
they
yes.
could have physically had?
Yes, they did have our script, and but what we think happened is when you submit scripts, you're supposed to do a release form. People are all aware of that, you folks, right? Mm-hmm. When you send a script to anybody, if you send me a script of yours to read, you got to send me a release form. Otherwise, if I never get to your script, or I get to it a year from now, or I get to it right away and say no thanks. And then for whatever reason, 10 years from now, I'm making a movie that slightly resembles a scene in your script, you're gonna sue my ass off. So if I have a release form that says, no, I did it, you know, so that just kind of protects you. But we had a release form, we had the WGA on our side, we were both WGA writers. So it was an easy win, but it still dragged on for 2 years, you know, because they were trying to obviously evade the thing, because they weren't making money at the box office. So it just, you know, those things happen. But it's a business that, I don't even know if Lindsay, I can't even say, and I know Lindsay today too, we're not, I can't say we're friends, but we talk. I can't say she even did it purposely. Because often what happens, it's like that George Harrison song, My Sweet Lord, and he was sued for that, remember that? Everybody said he ripped off the song He's So Fine by the Chiffons. You know, my sweet Lord, he's so fine. And he said, no, I love that song, but no, I didn't. Well, it was in his subconscious, and it became, the whole court case became a matter of subconscious. So Lindsay Duran probably had in the back of her mind somewhere years later and was sitting in a meeting room going, I got an idea. You know, and I know I probably have done that somewhere along the line, you know, so.
What happens if what happens if you pitch to somebody, and maybe even a friend, and they give you a suggestion? And you go, wow, that's really good. Do you have to give them credit, or?
The only time someone could vie for a credit on a project is if they work in development with you and you have an agreement with them.
Okay.
That you are being hired to do this. I can't pay you right now, but I'll give you credit. And then, yeah, they would either work for the credit or they work for dollars. But if they're just giving you suggestions, and that includes studio. If you go to a studio and somebody gives you, this guy, the $10,000 guy gives you you didn't have to get anything, that's his job.
Okay.
Unless they own it or option it, they don't get any credit.
Because I had.
Oh, you will have people come out of the wall. I mean, you will have people come out of the wall. And the people that normally do it are producers. They're the worst. Some producer like has your script for a little while and he's got some ideas about it, and all of a sudden he wants like they want to get involved in the creative end of it. They want a little piece of the creative end, so they want to. But no, you're the writer. It's your project. Unless you hire somebody or somebody hires them for you, nobody gets credit.
Yeah. Because it was a great idea. I mean, it really was. It's like, oh my God.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Have you ever sent a script to someone along with the release form, and they kept your script and not sent the release form back to you?
I had it happen to me once. It didn't really matter because the script was garbage anyway, but I don't know of anybody particular that why that happened to you.
No.
What was the question?
No, normally they'll send the script and the release form back together. Nobody wants to hold on to a script. Here's the thing though, you got to send it with a self-addressed stamped envelope, because nobody's going to say, I don't like the script, now I have to pay $1.50 to send it back to this guy. And you mount that up to 20, 30 scripts a month, suddenly you're paying 80. So send a release form, send a self-addressed stamped envelope if you want your manuscript back. And whatever you do, whether you are a novelist, script writer, whatever, do not send to a publisher or to a studio or even to an independent company your script on the computer or in a file. Send it as a hard piece. The industry still reads actual screenplays. Nobody, no director, no actor does not like to read on a computer. They might use the computer for brush-ups, make comments and things, but when you're reading a script for the first time, that's the last thing I want to do is have you send me something I got to sit on the computer and read it. So send me the book, send me the script, send a release form, that's the way it works. So that's the one old school thing that still holds true. Nobody likes to read material. And it's the same with music. I get music sent to me all the time. I get these e-cards and download files. It's like, dude, if you can't take the time to cut me a disc, I don't have the time to download your e-card just so I can sit there going, oh God, that's horrible. Now I have to erase this thing. And so it's just, so old school still holds pretty there. Okay, let's talk about one that, well, there's a couple here I think you'll find interesting. Let's talk about the Edgar Cayce story. Anybody familiar with Edgar Cayce? Okay. Edgar Cayce is considered the father of psychics. He died in the 40s. He was really big through the 30s and early 40s. He was just a poor farmer that lived in Kentucky, and basically he would fall into these sleep spells like a coma, and another voice would emit from him, and he would give psychic readings. Now, of course, everybody tried to prove him untrue, and oh, that's fake. But the guy was illiterate. I mean, he didn't even have a high school education, and yet when his voice would speak, it would speak like a college professor. Medical antidotes, I mean, incredible stuff that nobody, astronomy, just stuff that nobody could understand. So after a while, people started studying him, people tried to defame him, and just over the years, he went on for about 15, 20 years, and Harry Truman went and had readings from him. I mean, he predicted some amazing things. The war in Vietnam was predicted by him, the Korean War was predicted, World War II was predicted. Now, not predicted like Nostradamus type prediction, like I predict, but more like setting things into motion which will result in. So he started doing these medical readings, and they became, till this day, his medical journals are basically the Bible for, what's the word I'm looking for natural medicine.
For natural
Yeah, for natural medicine. For
medicine.
all the, thank you, homeopathic, brain fart. Homeopathic and health medicine, all that natural medicine, all comes from Edgar Cayce. He started because he would go into these readings and recommend to somebody with cancer that they, take a spearmint leaf and mix it with a thing and put a piece of bark and do it. Things that sounded almost like witchcraft or something. And then it would work. So one of the most famous ones was almonds. He would recommend almonds, like huge doses of raw almonds for almost everybody with leukemia or any kind of stomach cancers. Big almond diets and grinded almonds and everything. And nobody really understood why. What's with the almond thing, but it was working. It wasn't until 1978, 79 that science discovered that almonds had the highest source of laetrile, which is one of the biggest cancer fighting agents we have. So it's just things like that made him a fascinating character. He was sued by somebody who tried to a newspaper tried to bring him down and said he was doing some witchcraft and set him up, and there was a big trial, made the New York Times, went on for about 2 weeks. He was redeemed and so forth and so on. There was 83 books have been written about this guy. Out of the 83 books, 12 of them are biographies. The rest are just interpretations of his readings and different anthologies and stuff. But there's 83 books. So anyway, I come back from Vietnam, and I was still a folk singer, and I was just still adjusting from the war. I was into my art and all that. So I wanted to be into films, but I didn't really think I had a chance. I'm a kid from Patterson, New Jersey. I'd probably never see Hollywood. So I just went about my business, being a writer and all that stuff. But I had this Cayce changed my life. When I was in Vietnam, I read his book, The Sleeping Prophet, which was one of the best-selling books on Cayce. It's still selling today. I think it's in its 23rd printing. So I just said, wow, this would make a great movie, just in my own head. So then years later, 1972, 73, I'm working in the ad business. I'm still not a filmmaker, but I'm starting to make commercials and stuff. And something in me just said, I'd love to find out where these people are. Is the family still alive? And I found out that, of course, they are. It's the Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach. And they run what is now known as the Association of Research and Enlightenment. It's the largest institution in the world for psychic phenomena research. So a government goes there. I mean, it's huge. It's just, they have a museum, and it's huge. It's all in Virginia Beach. And why is it in Virginia Beach? And why is it built on this hill? Because Cayce said in the year 2027 there's going to be actually quakes up and down the East Coast, which nobody could ever believe that would happen on the East Coast, and that Virginia was going to be hit, Virginia Beach would be hit, and this was a land that he designated that his building and hospitals and everything be built on, so it wouldn't be, submerged in the ocean. So that's why they're building this structure. So anyway, I write him a letter. My name's Chip Miller. I'm just a kid. I'm doing a thing. I'm working in ad agency. I love your book. Geez, I would and that 120 pages, lucky enough to find a buyer, because it still comes down to that. And that's what's changed too, investment, buyers. People spend money differently these days. They're a little bit leery about spending it these days. There's too many right now, especially because there's so many insecurities going on in our country, especially and these insecurities are hitting Hollywood big time, big time. People are afraid to make a move. They're afraid to make a commitment on anything. It kind of reminds me of the Breen censorship days, or the communist blacklist days, where everybody's tippy-toeing around, not sure what's politically correct or incorrect. So that's got writers kind of tippy-toeing, and so the safe bet: make comic books, make video games, make superheroes, make action pictures, make car movies. stay safe, make sequels, you know, take video games, turn them into movies, just crisscross them because it's all now cross-promotion, cross-collab, everything is like,
Right.
yeah, so if you've got something that doesn't have a whole lot of marketing possibilities to it, and it's strictly a heart-rendering story that's gonna make some moviegoers happy, getting someone to believe that with you is the hard part. So bridging the gap is really just finding support, and it usually comes down to financial support. Because every film, every book requires financial support on some level to give you the freedom to write this thing, to make this thing, to film this thing. And unless you have the money to do it, it's not gonna happen. You're always gonna be depending on somebody else. And if you're depending on somebody else, you're against the odds. So, and I'm not saying the odds are breakable. Like Samuel Arkoff said, it's a great place to become a millionaire. But you just gotta realize how difficult it can be. And we're in a little room here with a bunch of talented writers. And right now in Hollywood, there's about 25,000 writers and about 15,000 unemployed. And every month, there's screenplays arriving from film schools all throughout the world, arriving on desks, unsolicited screenplays. I'm the next one, read mine, I got this great idea, and they just nonstop. I mean, I keep myself kind of unlisted now, so because now I'm running my own company and stuff, I don't want to be barraged. And I'm still getting between 25 and 30 unsolicited scripts a month that I didn't ask for. And unfortunately, you don't have the time for, if I was going to read every one of these scripts, I'd have no time to do what I do. So I'd have to get somebody else to read them. That means I have to pay somebody else to read them. So if I'm paying somebody $100, $150, $200, $10,000 to cover a script for me, that by page 10 they go, I'm sorry, this guy from Bumblefuck, Iowa has written a piece of shit. He didn't do his homework at all. Kill it, boom. Well, that was money wasted. So if I did that with every unsolicited piece that came in, it'd be like, silly odds. So there is no bridging the gap. It's just your own belief and your own tenacity and your own originality. And if you've created something original, hopefully in your lifetime it will find a home. And if not, hopefully in somebody else's lifetime it will. But I will tell you that, and this is not comforting to somebody who's looking to make money from their art right now, but I will tell you that our world, our world meaning books, film, entertainment, is filled with sad late case scenarios. As John Lennon said it, it's really a rough place to be. It's a very lonely place to be when you're ahead of your time. So when you are discovering books and novels from years and years ago and decades ago, and they're getting rediscovered or reappreciated long after the authors and writers and filmmakers are dead, it's kind of sad. But I read a lot of biographies, and it's just so sad how many of these famous movies and famous stars that I thought were enjoying all the success while they were alive were not. They were not. They were broke. They weren't getting the accolades. The movie was a tank. Some of the greatest, wonderful. It's a Wonderful Life. I can name so many movies that are just so credible that tanked. They were failures. They became successful over the years from other mediums, from TV, from this and that. So there's no bridging the gap. It's just a matter of keep your fingers crossed and have a lot of tenacity and believe in yourself. Follow your instincts. Don't listen to just everything that everybody else says. And if you can take what I'm saying for a grain of salt, but use your own instincts in the end. But I don't know if I could say there is a secret answer. The story, by the way, to answer your question originally about Atlas Shrugged, we thought the story was John Gall. It was the obvious. If that's the main mystery that drove me through the movie to the book, until the book disappointed me with a 28-page speech by Ayn Rand at the end, to me it was fascinating. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? He was mysterious. So to me it really wasn't it was a love story, and it was the woman's point of view, obviously, but it was really all about the driving force of getting to John Gall. But once the writers set in, they all got caught up in the politics and different social notions of the book.
And each one picked a different thread.
Yeah, each one took a different thread. Industrialism, politics, it was all over the place. Fascism, it was going everywhere. So.
Thanks.
All right, I'll get to something a little bit more. Excuse me, look at my own notes here now. Another thing.